Hey everybody, thanks for watching. My name is Andrew Brokos. On the off chance that you you somehow found this without knowing who I am, I'm the author of the Thinking Poker blog and also the co-host of the Thinking Poker podcast. This video is available to you for free because of the generous donations of largely readers of that blog and listeners of that podcast contributing to this organization here, the Bay Area Urban Debate League. It's currently December of 2015, and we're running a fundraising campaign. This is an organization that I work very closely with. In fact, I'm on the board of directors. Debate was something that I did quite a lot of when I was in high school and college, and I've been working with urban debate leagues in a number of different cities for close to 15 years now. So I can attest to what a good organization this specifically is, and also what a good cause this is and how helpful it is to the students that it serves. So I'm going to encourage you, you don't have to do anything just now, sit back, watch, enjoy the video, and at the end, if you would just contribute whatever you think the video was worth to you, I would be very appreciative of that. Even if it's no longer December 2015, donations are always welcome. There should be a clickable link here for you on the on the video if you choose to do it now, and we'll get that link back up at the end of the video. I'm going to be joined shortly by Daryl Jace, who, along with myself, is a coach and video producer at tournamentpokeredge.com. We're going to be recording a full hour of tournament poker strategy. So you, again, just sit back, watch that, enjoy, and afterwards click the link and donate whatever you think the video was worth. Thanks. And there you have it. Thanks again to Daryl Jace for joining me. I hope you all found that helpful. I think we talked about some pretty high-level things, but also some material that you can probably use no matter where you are in your poker development. So if you would, just do me a favor, click here on the donate link and contribute to this great organization whatever you think the video was worth to you. I can promise you that they're going to use the money for a good cause, and it'll help me personally a little bit as well, just in terms of my clout at this particular organization. The more individual donors that I can bring in, no matter how small or large your donation, just makes me look a little better in their eyes. Makes me look a little cooler to them, and that feels nice too. So even if you just want to do it out of appreciation to me, well, I would appreciate that. You can see here, actually, this is the website through which we're taking the donations. Somehow I ended up in second place here. I had been kicking butt for a long time, had raised more than anyone else, and suddenly this Jill Fox person, who was not even in the original lineup and no profile here either, it's a bit suspicious, suddenly she shows up on the scene with $6,000 raised. So yeah, I mean, probably by the time this video goes to air, I think we'll have maybe 2 weeks or so left in the month of December, and if you all want to try to get in another $4,000 and help me beat Jill, that would be awesome. But however much you want to contribute is cool. If you contribute at least $10, this is something I should emphasize, if you contribute at least $10, you'll also be entered into a drawing to win a variety of things, including a free month's membership at Tournament Poker Edge, some gear from nickcast.com, which is where we've got premium podcasts, books written by myself, and also by Thinking Poker Podcast co-host Nate Mavis, or even a free custom video that I create for you. And for every $500 that we raise, I'm going to be producing another video like this. So this is the third one that I've made. I've done one with Gareth Chandler, and I've done one with Dara Carney. Both of those have been a lot of fun, and I think good content there as well. You've got this one. I'll be producing at least 2 more, and if you guys get us up over $3,000, I'll be producing a third free video like this one. So your contribution's not only doing good for some other folks, but doing good for yourselves as well in terms of getting some more free poker content out there. And you can do your part, make your contribution, clicking here on the donate link. Thanks, everybody. Hey folks, so I'm here with Daryl Jace. First off, Daryl, thanks for joining me and doing this, and I'll let people know, even though I've apologized to you a few times. We were actually supposed to do this yesterday, and I messed up the time, so Daryl has been very accommodating in agreeing yet again to do this with me today.
Yeah, no problem, man. Glad to be here. Sounds fun.
And for those of you who don't know, Daryl is a fellow Tournament Poker Edge. No, that's not the one I wanted. Daryl is a fellow Tournament Poker Edge instructor, and some of you might know him as A back from on 2+2. I don't know how many A's are in that name, Daryl.
Eight. I think you're one A short.
Oh, my bad.
You probably think you got it right.
So what I've got here, this is 1K's 6-max tournament from the last W Coop that I played, which seemed like would be a good one for the two of us to review together. And I just filtered for hands that I V-pipped and that saw the flop. Even that, we ended up with 68 hands, so I don't know if we'll get through all of them, but we can do our best.
I'm gonna set the over/under at 10.
Well, some of them are pretty straightforward like this. I mean, I don't think this is too controversial.
Seems pretty standard.
So Turco Man.
I've been thinking about.
I've got doing this in the wrong order. Okay, well, you guys know how the tournament ended.
Okay. I've been thinking about playing those spots like kind of tricky and weird. Maybe we'll get to that later though.
Like doing something other than shipping it?
Like basically shipping it, but 3-betting to like 3x and then calling it off instead of shipping.
Just thinking that looks a little stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more inclined to do that sort of stuff in weaker fields. You know, I mean, you probably recognize like half the players at that table.
Yeah.
I feel like there's less. There's like you're not gonna fool a lot of these people with stuff like that.
I remember like 5 years ago, I used to do stuff like that with air and just get people to fold ridiculous hands. Like, I remember back on UB, I 3-bet with like 14 bigs 3-handed at a final table with air, and the guy showed and fold jacks. It was just a really common thing back then. It's like no one like 3-bet folded like under 30 bigs back then, like 5-6 years ago. That was like a thing.
Yeah,
so
we're in a new age.
Yeah. So when I was doing off like 15, 16, there's like, has to be aces. Anyways, you defend a 3-4 off.
Yeah, that seem reasonable to you? I mean, obviously it's not a very good hand, but the price is pretty sweet.
Me and a buddy of mine were doing like PIO solver stuff on this, and it's like hands like 3-4 suited seem way better here than
sure.
King 10 off and shit.
Oh, wait, you're saying 3-4 suited better than Queen 10 off?
Like King 10 off and like shit like that.
I can see that. I mean, 3-4 offsuit's a good deal worse than 3-4 suited, I think.
Yeah, it's quite a bit different.
Yeah, I could certainly see folding this.
It's pretty reasonable. It's just really hard to debate, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think like the tougher the field is, the more of a case there is for folding. Like, there's just fewer opportunities to show down when you have the best hand and to steal pots and that sort of thing.
Yeah, especially small blind, just flatting super tight range. But perhaps that's better. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the 6-max, that's maybe a little less true than, but yeah, it was versus an under the gun raise. Yeah, I think there's a fair chance that should just be a fold.
All right, cool.
Do you 3-bet or call this?
I don't know. Like, I'm like the way I view these spots are like more strategy based. Like, do I want this hand both in my 3-bet call, or do I want this both in my 3-bet and call range? Like, I don't know if you split them into both or if you even look at it like that, because I'm sure there's merits to both. They're probably both pretty damn close in EV, right?
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, one of the things that surprised me is looking at some books like Expert Heads Up, No Limit, and
is this Will Tipton's book?
Yeah.
I heard it's really good.
I think it's great. But just like how many hands you tend to be indifferent with at equilibrium on early streets anyway. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the sort of optimal strategy here is some sort of mix between 3-betting and calling. I feel like in practice, especially in tournaments, I tend to err on the side of calling in kind of this exact spot. Like the under the gun opener, I feel like shouldn't be giving me a whole lot of action with with like dominated hands when I 3-bet. I mean, he'll have ace jack, ace 10, queen jack suited, king queen. It's not like he doesn't have any, but it's a little thin, I feel like, to 3-bet for value, and I think that I have, even against pretty good tournament players, I feel like I have more of a post-flop edge than a pre-flop edge. So like personally, I tend not to force a lot of pre-flop like four bet, five bet type wars. That's just not my wheelhouse as much as it is. Like I don't know if better get there as a tournament pro, but just like in tournaments in general, I tend to want to take the fight post flop.
That seems to be the trend nowadays. I remember a few years ago the game was like very four bet, five bet heavy. Now seems like a lot more people want to get to post.
Yeah, I think the tournament guys are definitely getting more comfortable with the post flop play, but I still think that I have, especially with like deeper stacks as well. I mean, maybe I'm just being arrogant, but I still feel like I have an advantage over your average tournament pro when it comes to playing after the flop, and not so much when it comes to 4 and 5 betting wars.
Yeah. How does the button affect your decision here?
That is a good question. Yes, I mean, getting squeezed by the button is pretty nasty because we're not really deep enough that I want to like jam over a squeeze.
No.
But calling a squeeze with this hand. So I feel like ace queen suited, I'd feel a lot more comfortable flatting here because that is a hand where I feel like I could also call a small squeeze and not feel as bad about it. That's a very good question. I think the more active the button is, the more I would want to 3-bet just to keep him. Even if he just calls behind, that's still pretty bad. So yeah, I think the better and the more active the button is, the more of a case there is for 3-betting. That's a very good point. This guy, I've got him in a 3-bet for, I mean, a small sample, but.
Yeah, if button's good and he flats, you're in a squeeze position versus the most likely C better,
Right.
like that guy in position. So
yeah, I mean, you can even imagine like the same flop. This is like I think this is a pretty straightforward call in a heads up pot versus if the button is sitting behind me. I mean, I still probably call, but you can imagine how much the expected value of calling has gone down as a result of having him sitting behind me.
For sure. Yeah.
And I ended up just folding to a second barrel. Not 100% sure that's right, but I do feel like, among other things, the ace queen is blocking some of his most likely barreling hands. Maybe be king queen, ace jack, stuff like that. I mean, on the one hand, I dominate them. On the other hand, I block them. So I don't know that this is the best two-street bluff catcher.
It's just one of those spots where we don't know the right answer. I don't think.
This is going to be a real disappointing video. They're just going to be like, they just keep coming across spots that they don't know.
It's really frustrating, just like not knowing the right answer in a lot of spots.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing here. This seems obviously bad.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was a misclick. I do at least have the sense. I mean, I think this is a very bad flop to try to continue versus a small blind cold call.
Yeah, snap check for sure.
And just give that up. So at least I caught my losses. But that's a spot that we do know the answer to. Don't open 6-5 offsuit under the gun.
The part I don't know the answer to is like, what good hands do I want to check on that board so my checking range isn't just garbage?
Yeah, I think, let's see, what was the flop here? So I think a lot of Jack X, I'll check back here. I can see a case for betting ace jack, but certainly like king jack, jack 10, I think like queen 10 suited is a hand I would check here, maybe queen 9 suited if I open that. 10-9, 10-8, pocket 10s, pocket 9s. I don't think checking aces or kings would be awful.
And that's my strategy, but like this easy like counter and the counter I usually take when people check these boards is bet 6K on turn and then bet, like 16, 17K on river.
Sure. I mean, I think that checking, I mean, this isn't a complete counter to that, but I think like queens and queen jack are also very reasonable checking hand. Even like pocket jacks. I mean, I don't slow play middle set nearly as often as I do top set, but I mean, I think like kind of the point that we're getting at here is that this is a flop that you probably will, like this is a spot where I can see checking back quite often, because the small blind's cold call range is like pretty well defined, and you don't really have that many hands in your range that are going to be eager to play a big pot. You can't really, I mean, obviously you can't bet 6-5 offsuit here, but I don't particularly want to bet like ace king on this flop either. So I think I just tend not to do very much c betting on this board in general. I mean, that does still make it a little tough when he overbets the turn because, I probably am betting some hands like 10-9 and whatnot, but I mean, I think you can just kind of, at least against an opponent who seems like they might be good enough, you can kind of grit your teeth and call down with some of the better bluff catchers among those like mid-strength hands I was talking about checking back. I mean, any hand with a queen or a jack in it that's a pretty significant blocker against whatever he's bombing it with on the turn, whatever he's like representing by bombing the turn. I think even like Queen 9 and Queen 10 having the blockers to 10-9 can make for some pretty profitable bluff catching. So I think against opponents who seem like they might be good enough to do stuff like that, I mean, you just have to do some kind of aggressive bluff catching against them.
Makes sense. What do you think about like my strategy on boards like this where I don't like checking big hands is to check some pretty good draws that can at least turn the nuts?
Yeah, I think checking like ace X of spades is pretty reasonable here.
Yeah, what do you think of like King 10? Or is that just a mandatory bet because no showdown value?
Yeah, I'm a lot more likely to bet the King 10. I care less about getting check raised when I have that. If you're blocking 10-9, you can get him to fold. Like if he flatted ace king, I think you can get him to fold that. So I see more of a case for betting King 10.
Ace X of spades, yeah. Checking like Ace X of spades, yeah.
And like King 10 of spades, I would bet. But I think like a number of my other spade draws, I think there's a pretty good case for checking those back, like 9-8 of spades, check back. And that's part of the thing too, is like we're talking about checking a lot of one pair hands on the turn, but a lot of them are hands that are on the flop, but a lot of them are hands that will improve on the turn. So when the turn is like the 3 of diamonds, it can be a little tough, or like you might be a little vulnerable to an overbet, but a lot of times the turn is going to be a spade or a 9 or a 10 or a king or an ace or something that does scramble your flop checking range a little bit. Like it promotes some hands in your flop checking range to at least pretty comfortable bluff catchers, if not very strong hands.
Yeah, makes sense. Last point for moving on. I think like our main bet barrel hands are probably like 7s through deuces here. Does that make sense?
That's interesting. I would put King 10 front and center.
Yeah, King 10 for sure. I was just thinking most hands want to check at some point or play really well as checks.
Yeah, I like deuces through 7s are such, just like barreling with no equity on this board isn't that appealing to me. I think those kinds of hands tend to play better as like a check back flop bluff a later street thing. Because I actually think that the small blinds range here is somewhat polarized between like hands that have connected well enough with this board that they're going to be very reluctant to fold, and hands that have just where this is just an awful flop for them, which is going to be like his smaller pocket pairs and maybe like his ace king if he has that. So those are hands where you don't really need to bet the flop to get them off. And I'm more inclined to bet a hand like deuces on a later street, or even like 5-6 offsuit, if for some reason I found myself holding that here, is a hand that I would probably bluff at some point if he kept checking. And so those hands that have like no equity, I'm more inclined to use those as hands that will bluff on later streets if he checks repeatedly. For like running a big multi-barrel, I do want to have some equity in my range, and so that might be smaller spade draws, 7-6 of spades, King 10. Those are the two that come to mind immediately.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just bring it up because I did a few like, our buddies of mine did a few like PIO calcs, and they're like wanting them to barrel hands like that on boards like this.
That's surprising.
Yeah, that's why I asked. But
I have shifted in some spots, mostly when there's an ace on the board, to like I used to just never bet under pairs to the board. I just was like, these are just terrible barreling hands, and I'm not going to bet them. I think there are some boards that are so good for my under the gun opening range, especially at like a full ring table when there's an ace on the flop. I will see bet like pocket twos just because it's so hard for me to find good bluffing candidates. I don't feel like and part of it is that this is also a board where I'm not value betting that much, so I don't feel like I need that many bluffs on the flop. Whereas on the ace high board, I am doing a lot of value betting as well, and so I feel like I should have a pretty vigorous bluffing strategy as well, and so I can dip into some pretty unideal bluffing hands. But here, I don't think we really want to do that much bluffing on the flop that we need to be. That's my take on it anyway. That we need to be like really digging deep to find any excuse for a bluff.
Cool, sounds good. So 15 minutes, 2 hands, like right on pace.
3 hands. We there was the one that we just sort of the Jack 10 suited, yeah.
Oh yeah.
We gave everyone a preview of the end. So this isn't something you see. Oh, sorry, I thought that was a limp. Yeah, I think this is a pretty reasonable squeezing spot. It's one of those decent blocker value not quite good enough to call. Like ace jack, I would probably just flat here. So I think ace 10 is kind of the best hand that I don't feel comfortable calling, and so I chose to use it as a light 3-bet.
I think a good question to ask is how do you feel playing this hand post with like the certain stack depths on like some of your most likely flops?
In a 3-bet pot?
Yeah, so you 3-bet, they call.
Not
Like,
terribly. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to 4-bet ace king, and I think tens plus tend to get 4-bet. So I think that when I hit, I mean, I'm not going to c-bet if there's an ace on the flop, but I'm going to feel reasonably good about checking this back and bluff catching on a lot of runouts. I don't feel too bad about getting a 10 high flop. I think that you're c-betting king queen x, king jack x, queen jack x. I can feel reasonably good about that.
yeah.
Okay, so here's a great example of I'm just going to check back here. I think it's a little, the hand's a bit overrepresented at this point. I don't think Better Get There has dominated ace x in his range. Certainly not enough that I'm going to be able to put in twice the pot for value, but I do have a very good bluff catcher here, and I'm going to be checking back like kings and queens and some other hands that don't really want to face multiple barrels. So the plan here is just check back and call down if he keeps betting. When he checks twice, do you see a case for betting now?
I do, but I'll see a case for checking, which makes it a lot tricky.
Yeah, I feel like I probably checked here just because I don't think there are that many hands that I'm that I'm checking back and then bluffing twice with. Like I still think I'm only getting one value bet out of this hand, and I think I'm inclined to wait until the river to do
Seems
that.
reasonable.
Not that I'm bluffing a whole lot in this situation either, which is why I'm using such small sizing, right? Just because it's pretty unlikely that I show up here with a bluff. I think it would have to be like pocket fours or something that I'm like turning into a bluff. Not that I don't think I would even 3-bet that pre-flop though. It's really hard for me to find hands I'd be bluffing with here, which is why I'm offering such enticing odds.
Yeah, I don't think you get to the river with many hands that aren't a pair.
But I mean, I can't really see myself winning much more than this in this type situation. I mean, I think if I bet the turn, there's a good chance he just folds.
Yep.
And I certainly don't think he's calling turn and river. I don't
Seems
think he's
good.
calling a much bigger river bet.
That's a good one. So you check the 3-3.
Yeah, and this is mostly because I'm up against a big blind caller, who's if this was like the small blind who'd cold called me, I'd be way more likely to see bet this. But I think that this guy's range is just wide enough that he's gonna miss this flop way more often than I'm happy
He's
about.
certainly gonna like he has to miss this flop like over half the time probably.
Oh yeah, I mean,
For sure. Maybe like 60% of the time.
yeah, I think pretty much any flop misses a big blind caller that often. This flop is like even. I mean, it's like a lot of his calling range is going to be Broadway, or at least like one Broadway card. Like he's not calling with that much 5x or even 8x pre-flop, I wouldn't think. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he has like nothing, no pair, no draw, 80% or more on this flop.
Yeah, seems good.
So yeah, I'm now with the queen, and I could also see checking back. I don't think I'm really going to see bet like ace king or ace jack on this flop either. So I think there are some hands that.
I was thinking we should see about this board a ton because if you were to run like your range versus his range, which is I think an important thing for like people to like realize. I think initiative is based on like everyone talks about initiative. Initiative is based on you having an advantage at the hand, like a range advantage.
Right.
The fact that you raise pre doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just implies an advantage, and that's why you bet a lot. Like if you were to run range on range advantage here, you probably have 60-something% equity versus his range, unless you're opening 6-5 off again.
Right. Yeah.
Which
No,
I don't think is
that's
like
true,
a,
and that implies you're saying that we should be betting pretty often.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you should bet like 80-90% of the time here.
I guess the reason I'm reluctant to bet ace king, and maybe the implication of this is just that it should be also for small sizing, which I think would be like just betting something like 1500 with a
Yep.
pretty wide range, and that's another function of having that range advantage is like there's so many hands in his range that are just like queen jack offsuit or something where even facing a small bet they just have to fold.
Yep.
And ace king does benefit from making queen jack fold. It doesn't benefit that much, and I certainly don't want to risk like if a bet of 3500 is called here, I don't feel too good about my ace king. Um, but bet of 1500, I think there's a chance he'll call with some worse hands, and also given that the only value or most of the value in betting ace king is just in making him fold like two live cards, I think that I don't really want to spend a lot of money to accomplish that because I don't need to bet a lot to make him fold like queen jack. And then that also makes it easier to bet threes for a small amount because he will peel with some hands like overcards. So I think like c betting small in a spot like this to just sort of leverage that range advantage, especially when a lot of the hands that are contributing to that range advantage are hands like ace king that are probably good but also don't benefit very much from seeing the next card or from letting your opponent see the next card.
Yeah. Like my check range looks like my betting range is like, well, I'll say my checking range is smaller. It's just like pocket eights because it just blocks a ton, pocket aces because it just blocks everything, and then like hands like 9-7 or something, 9-10 that don't want to get check raised off its equity, and kind of hits those middling cards that I don't hit.
See, I don't really sweat getting check raised on this board very much.
We probably shouldn't, because people don't check raise flop, right?
Yeah, and with good reason. I mean, there's not he really can't do a lot of check raising here in no small part because we have a range advantage and like there are some boards where even though like the preflop raiser has a range advantage, the player who calls out of position like they might have more nut hands in their range, but I don't think that's really the case on this board. I mean, I guess he can have like 5-3 suited and 8-5 suited that I'm not going to have, but
It's like 13 combos of check raises max.
yeah, yes. I mean, I don't think you're going to get like I would bet 9-7 here, and I wouldn't really sweat getting check raised. I might even call it check raise.
Yeah, that's a good point. You could peel a check raise also, because you have backdoor flush draws too.
Right.
Okay, you're right.
I mean, maybe even the threes is a somewhat exploitive check, just thinking that a lot of people will, if anything, overfold even to a 1500 bet and not really wanting to do that when I have threes. So I think you're right that there may well be a case for betting like 1500 with a ton of hands, including this one. And I might even bet 1500 with a lot of those hands and still not do it with threes for kind of exploitive reasons.
Sounds good.
Once the queen peels off, I think this is, I certainly would bet like ace king or ace jack now if I didn't do it on the flop. And again, like using a small sizing. So I think like I definitely want to start trying to, so I see I'm even going even smaller. This is like 30% pot.
Yeah, so we differ a lot here, because I bet 15 on the flop. I would have bet 15 on the flop like you, but on the turn I probably would have bet like half pot to 2/3. And my sizing, like this deep stack, is usually pretty big on the turn. But perhaps that's not good versus his range here.
I tend to think of it in terms of how polarized I am when I'm thinking about sizing. And so if I were thinking that on the turn, I'm pretty much only betting slow played, very strong hands like pocket eights and pocket aces, and then hands that just became extremely strong on the turn, like ace queen or king queen, and then bluffs. So if my betting range looked like that, I'd be inclined to use the larger size, and that might well be the right betting range here. If
Why
I'm
is
also
Why is betting bigger when you're more polarized? Makes sense.
It's. Have you read Mathematics of Poker?
It's too difficult. Not a smart person.
So we're essentially in a spot where we're playing a game. This is something that comes up a lot in Heads Up No Limit as well. You can kind of simplify this as a game that's the polarized range versus bluff catcher game, where Big Fox 86 pretty much exclusively has bluff catchers in his range. Especially if we're betting big, he doesn't really have any hand that's like ahead of hands that we're value betting. But at the same time, we could be doing enough bluffing that he can't just fold all of his bluff catchers. And so the question is, when you find yourself in that sort of situation, and the toy game that's often used to model this is the Ace King Queen game. Is that something you've heard of? Or I guess I
Yeah.
should probably explain it for people who
Yeah,
are
go
watching
ahead.
anyway. You can imagine, let's say that I could have either an ace or a queen here, and I know that Big Fox 86 has a king, and we're just playing, this isn't regular poker, this is just whoever has the highest card wins at the end, but I get to bet twice. And so even though we have the same equity in the pot, we both have 50% equity in the pot, right? I have either an ace or a queen, so I'm either winning or losing half the time, and he has exactly a king. So we both have the same equity in the pot, but I have a huge advantage in this game because I have the opportunity to bet. And what I can do is, I know I have the best hand when I have an ace, so I can just bet that, and I want to make as big of a bet as I possibly can. And if I only ever bet with an ace, Big Fox 86 can just always fold his kings. So what I can do is I can use the queens in my range to force Big Fox 86 to have to call some of my bets with a king, or else he folds too often, and then I successfully bluff with my queens. And the question to ask is, what's the ideal amount to bet in that game? How much do you want to bet so that you're giving Big Fox a legitimate decision with his bluff catcher? And I think that, like, generally the answer is you want to bet as much as you have bluffs to justify betting. Like, if you bet so big that he can just fold even though you're betting all of your bluffs because the pot odds are so bad for him, then you've made a mistake. You've let him off the hook. At the same time, if you bet small enough that he can comfortably call even though you're betting all of your value hands, then again you've made a mistake. So the idea is that you want to bet the largest amount that you can balance with your bluffs. And when you're in that polarized range situation, you don't have to worry about all of your value hands are guaranteed to be good. So basically I would assume king queen is the nuts here. And so if I'm only betting hands that are guaranteed to be good no matter what his calling range looks like, then I want to use the biggest sizing that I can get away with and still have bluffs to balance it. In a situation where I'm making more thin value bets, where I might be betting a hand like pocket sevens, where I'm not going to be ahead of his entire calling range, and in order to get value from sevens, I have to make sure that he's got weaker hands in his calling range as well. I don't beat 100% of his bluff catchers. Then I'm going to be more concerned about using small sizing. Likewise, if I'm doing a sort of value/protection bet with something like ace king or ace jack, again, those are hands that they can't profitably make large bets, but they can profitably make small bets. And so giving myself the option to use smaller sizing is more appealing to me when I'm betting in that depolarized sort of way, where it's not just I have the nuts or nothing. I have a lot of hands in between that are looking for protection in addition to value when they bet.
Yeah, good explanation. I think like a simple a river spot's like more easier to look at. Like, I think a general
Yeah.
principle is like the less value and the more bluffs you have, the bigger you have to bet, and vice versa, right?
Yes. And the main difference between the turn and the river is that equity is still in play here. And I think on this board it's not terribly relevant, especially because a lot of draws got betted on an earlier street. But that ace king queen game I described the hand values are completely static. So a king can't possibly improve to a strong hand on the river. Here that is if I'm betting ace king on the turn, even if I'm called by a hand that's better than mine, I still have a chance of hitting an ace or king on the river, and that complicates the game a little bit. So yeah, you're right that the river is like a pure, a more pure instance of the polarized range versus bluff catcher game. But I think this board is close enough to a static board that we can reduce it to the PVBC game without too much, without loss of too much specificity.
So yeah, what do you think? So are you saying you should bet big here because you're kind of polarized?
I guess I'm thinking that I can see myself betting a pretty depolarized range here, although I might have bet hands like sixes and sevens on the flop. So this again might be a kind of exploitive thing. I guess the thing I feel confident saying is that the more polarized you are, the bigger your bet should be. In terms of whether I would be polarized here or not, or whether it makes sense for me to make a smaller bet just for exploitive reasons, I'm less sure about, but I can see a pretty good case for why I should have bet bigger, at least with this hand. I mean, it's also reasonable that you might have two different bet sizes on the turn, and your big bet size consists of most of your strong hands and some bluffs, and your small bet size consists mostly of the mid-strength kind of hands with a couple of strong hands just to make your opponent indifferent from check raise bluffing you.
Yeah, poker's too complicated.
Anyway, 1265 won it, so. Hand 4.
4 hands? Cool. I told you over under 10. we'll just have a check fold. No, he doesn't bet.
Yeah, it would have been just a check fold, and I think still a pretty straightforward fold on the turn.
Yep, that's good. I think you have like a surprisingly wide value range there, so like candidates for raising.
On the turn?
Yeah.
I thought we were going to get through one quickly. So you're saying when he bets here, yeah, I guess I have like tens, eights, threes, twos, 10-8, maybe even 3-2 suited, all in my range.
You have 10-3 suited,
Yeah.
10-8 off, 8-3 suited, 8-2 suited.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like pretty big combo draws, ace-10, king-10, all combos.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's a good number of hands I'd be raising here for value, and I still don't think that makes me want to. I mean, I don't think this is what you're suggesting that I should be raising fives here. But I think I can do a lot of semi-bluff raising here, and also I'm going to turn a fair number of hands like 3x or maybe even 8x into bluffs.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
But yeah, I think my bluffs are going to be either draws or hands that have pretty significant blockers to Big Fox having a set.
Sounds good.
You're pretty comfortable with that peel?
Yep, that's good.
And that's certainly good. What do you think about raising versus calling?
I don't know. I don't know how Tropo plays anymore, or I don't know if I ever did.
I see more of a case for raising the deeper we are. Right now, if I just peel here, we're going to end up with SPR of roughly 1 on the turn. So there's really, there are some turn cards that are, even a heart is like, it's really not that bad. Like, how many heart combos is he 3-betting, and how much is he worried about me having 2 hearts? If he has like pocket aces, I don't think he's check folding if the turn is the 10 of hearts.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I think at this stack depth, I feel pretty comfortable just slow playing it. I think that at deeper stacks, because it's not that easy to have a bluff raising range here. Just because like once you raise to like 18K, it's hard not to have enough equity to call a shove.
You'd have to bluff like your gutters, I think, for like 20K.
Yeah, and I don't have that many gutters here. Like
King-8 suited, basically.
Yeah, I don't even know that I would call the 3-bet with King-8 suited.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I just like I don't really know what my again, like deeper stacks. I think there's a lot more room to leverage the fact that I have sets in 8-7 suited in my range that he may not have. But at this stack depth, I don't think there's really room for me to leverage that. So I think it's a lot safer for me to just peel here with a really wide range and then get to play the turn in position with an SPR of 1, and I can still pretty comfortably have all my monster hands in my range.
I think interesting way to kind of view the spot is, one, I think there's a lot of regs who just never 3-bet the big blind anymore, so just loves to take it to the streets. Like I do a lot of looking at people's in position by position 3-bet. There's a lot of people who just don't 3-bet the big. So if he's that guy and just super nutted, then I think we should just raise. So the tighter his range is, the more we should raise.
Yeah.
Another thing
I've got him in a 3-bet of 8 and
0 of 13 from the big blind.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't imagine I looked at that in game, but yeah, that's certainly a good thing to be aware of.
Yeah, a lot of rigs have these like 3-bet tells. There are people who just love 3-betting cutoff but hate 3-betting the button for some reason. So they're just like flat. They're call 2-bet on the button super high, and their call 2-bet on the cutoffs really low, and then they 3-bet the cutoff a lot and flat the button and don't 3-bet the button very often.
You can see here on my HUD, I've got the pre-flop raise, or this is raise first in actually by position. So this is like under the gun, hijack, cutoff, button, small blind, and maybe I should be setting up my 3-bet the same way. I tend not to look at the positional 3-bets as often.
Yeah, I think it's a spot where people have very different views on what to do.
Interesting.
Anyways, I think theoretically you should be 3-betting the spot super polarized. I think you should either be really nutted or just have some really garbage hands.
The big blind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. especially at this stack depth. Again, like as you get deeper, you have to worry more about how well your hand plays post flop. But at this stack depth, I think just three betting a couple of like really junky hands that you can't call with, and then your nutted stuff.
Which makes a pretty good argument for just calling, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because his overpaired. I mean, this is a particularly bad turn. Like I would rather get a heart than an ace on the turn, for sure.
Yeah.
Because now like his kings and queens and stuff aren't going to feel so good. And he may not have ace king in his range. I mean, I think some people aren't going to bet the flop with ace king. And then as you were saying, like whatever his three bet bluffing range looks like. I mean, maybe that ace is going to look like a good bluff card for them. So it might not be a complete disaster. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a lot of hands that are going to become weak on a lot of turns. He has a lot of hands that are just already weak on the flop, and a lot of hands like kings and queens and jacks that are going to be pretty strong on a fair number of turn cards, even though this is a bad one.
Yeah, sounds good. He checks.
Yeah.
I love your bet size.
I chose to just go super tiny here. I think again we're kind of playing the polarized versus bluff catcher game once he checks the ace. No, I guess that's not true actually, because I think I want to bet here with a hand like. No, I guess I wouldn't bet 9-8. I guess 10-9 is a hand I would want to bet here. I could even see myself jamming the river with 10-9 potentially.
I hate the spot with my range because it's just such a good spot for him to check rip, and it's just very hard for me to play my range well here.
Yeah, see, I don't really mind getting check ripped if I have 10-9 though.
That's for sure. Yeah.
And that's part of why I would bet it, is like I don't want to check back and then have him jam the river.
Yeah, that seems good.
And I think a little bit like I think he's gonna be hard pressed to fold pocket queens to this, and for good reason, because I'm betting some hands worse than pocket queens here. So I think I can do like a little bit of pot building with this bet, maybe induce a check shove, or some sort of light check raise from him, and still get stacks in on the river. That's not a very good. I mean, obviously it's not like bad for my hand, but it's bad in terms of my ability to get paid off. I still don't think there's any play. Whoa. What the hell? That's very surprising to me.
That's pretty surprising.
I mean, I guess I'm thinking this is just like such a good card for my. But I mean, he doesn't have flushes in his range. I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. I can't defend that. So as you predicted, this is what his 3-bet range looks like, and this is not actually that unreasonable to me. I think as long as he's not doing this with like every combination of hand that looks like this, I do think this is, as we were discussing, this is what his light 3-betting range should look like.
Yeah, I agree.
He just can't do too much of it. I guess I was thinking this is just like such a good river card for my range that it's. I mean, I can see checking back a set on the river. I don't think that's wildly unreasonable, but I think that checking back a straight is too much.
I agree.
Okay. Sorry, you all had to see that.
You should watch I don't know if you watch my videos, but it's just me berating myself for just terrible plays.
This seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, looks good.
Another instance. I tend to use the small sizing a lot when I'm called by the big blind because of that range advantage stuff we discussed earlier. Like people who call out of the big blind just have like really weak ranges relative to the pre-flop raiser, and especially on pretty staticky boards like this, I think small bets are very.
Yeah, I would say anything between like 1K and 3K is pretty reasonable. Mm-hmm. I don't even hate a min bet, to be honest.
Yeah. I think the min bets. And this isn't always a bad thing, but I think the min bets tend to cause people to get a little spazzier, and a lot of times I really just want them to fold.
Yeah.
So I think just like giving them a little room to fold with dignity, essentially.
This is in my 4-bet range typically.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
My 4-bet range looks like ace 5 to ace 2 suited here, and then my big hands.
Mm-hmm. And your sizing is about like 12K?
I don't know. It's probably like 12 to 15. I go 14, but I'm fine with like 12 to 15.
Yeah, I think 15 starts to get pretty close in terms of, being priced in to call shoves. I was thinking 12 to 14, so I guess we're on roughly the same page.
Yep.
I guess I decided to peel him here. I think because I saw the 9-4 suited from before, but I mean this is a pretty different spot.
A good thing to mention for like the listeners here, like if you want to play a four bet game here versus a strong opponent, which I think Troll Pro is, you cannot have many bluffs at this stack depth. So like if you were to run this in IC Miser and said you were gonna bluff half the time and call a shove half the time with like your nutted hands, Troll Pro could just rip every single hand in this range. Do you have IC Miser?
I don't have a. I think I did like a free trial of it and then didn't pay for it.
All right. Well, if you were to plug this in Miser and said you were bluffing half the time on your four bets, like this deep, and if you go to like 14, 15K, especially, Twirlpool can probably shove every single hand that he three bet.
Yeah, four bet folding is real expensive.
Yeah. So like at this stacked up, you probably don't want to be bluffing more than half the time versus a good player. You probably can only bluff like a third of the time. I'm just guessing. And you only have how many combos of value do you have here?
I guess like
45, 46?
I would probably do like tens plus an ace king.
Yeah, so that's 46, which means you could have like 20 bluffs or something like that. And that's like king, queen offsuit and 7-8 suited. That's 20 bluffs for you, like right there.
See, I don't think I would use either of those hands though.
Yeah, I was just picking like
two.
I
see.
Yeah. So
yeah, because like the ace X hands that you mentioned before would be 16. The ace deuce through ace five suited.
Yep.
So I guess like those, and then maybe like a very occasional random something else.
Yeah.
Even just those might be right. I mean, 16 might actually be a better number than 20 anyway. But yeah, I think the four betting here is probably better than calling. I think I just got the sense that 12 Pro was like getting pretty goofy.
Okay.
And I think that may have been reading too much into the 9-4 suited hand, or it might have been based on some other hands that we're not looking at right now.
So I was doing a session with Potential, and he's just like, oh, 3-1, I'm not fucking folding anything, really.
That's kind of my attitude. I mean, I'll fold like king 10 offsuit, or like really, really tough to play out of position type hands. But yeah, I mean, especially against a guy who I think is getting a little goofy with the three betting. Yeah, I mean, like folding a suited ace, getting 3-1 is a pretty big. Like, it's not actually that hard to play post flop against someone whose range is too wide. Like every once in a while, they will have a big hand and you'll be dominated. But in terms of like having positive expected value plays after the flop, I don't think it's that hard to find them against someone who just, for whatever reason, has decided he's going to try to slap you around.
Here's the problem I have with it is that people see bet way too much, and I feel like that really hampers our ability to realize equity. And this is the thing I'm struggling with, because I get 3-1, I get that people three bet a lot, and you got a flat, but I hate that they see bet like 80-90% in three bet pots when they should be see betting like 40 to 70 on a lot of boards.
I mean, so with hands like this, it means like that makes me feel pretty good about my check shove plan for like anytime there's two clubs or a gut shot.
Yeah.
It means that's going to be pretty profitable. It means I can feel pretty good about peeling. Like even if there weren't two clubs here, I think I'd be check calling a c bet. And that's I guess how I'm dealing with people c betting too much is just kind of having pretty low standards for continuing on the flop.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean there are definitely times where you end up folding the best hand because you have ace high, but I don't think that happens that often. Between the times that your ace high is not the best hand and the times that it was never the best hand and the times that like whatever janky thing they 3-bet with actually did make a pair on the flop. I don't know that there's that much equity tied up in ace high in 3-bet pots, especially when it's a bad ace high like this one, because a lot of their like over c betting is coming from hands that are better than yours anyway.
That makes sense. I never thought about it like that. That makes a lot of sense.
So this is, I don't think, a hand that I'm going to check. I hope I don't check raise this. I think this plays. I mean, I'm inclined to say it plays a lot better as a check call. I think
shove.
Maybe no, I definitely wouldn't check shove. I mean, if I'm doing this, I'm trying to get him, I'm inducing.
No, I mean check call, check shove turn.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, probably, or like let him check back the turn and try to bluff an ace on the river or something. Like part of the reason I like check calling with this is because I'm gonna check shove a lot of my club draws. So I think like clubs are going to look like pretty good bluffing cards for him, and ace is certainly going to look like a pretty good bluffing card for him, and he may even value bet, or he probably will value bet like ace king or ace queen if he hits it. So I think I have a lot of good implied odds with a hand like this one. I think this is again just like feeling like he's getting real out of line. I think I'm doing some pretty exploitive like trying to induce from him sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But he's all through it.
Yeah, I think that's a call.
Yeah, I agree.
I think your sizing's like really nutted looking too.
Well, I mean, I agree that it's really nutted looking, but there's no reason it can't be a bluff. I mean, especially like we talked about him.
Let me show you something, Andrew. Click options. Go to navigation at the bottom.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's way easier. It runs way faster
No
too.
kidding. You've changed my life.
Yeah.
I mean, so we talked about him like over c betting. So there's no reason I couldn't just pick up and do this with like king queen offsuit.
Yeah.
I'm risking 13 to win 21. Like that's pretty great. Or risking 14 to win 21. I mean, if he really does want to just never play back at me here without a pair, that's fine. Like even with this hand, I don't really mind if he folds king queen right now. Like that's perfectly fine. Or if he folds like, I mean, so if he has like 9-8 of diamonds, I think there's a fair chance he either peels this or rips it.
Cool.
And again, like if he wants to like fold a lot to min check raises, that's fine.
Cool.
Opted to go for a donk bet here. Do you do much donk betting?
Not in raised pots, but in limp pots, I think it's pretty reasonable. I just think he crushes your range all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to donk real aggressively here. I think if I had a set of fours is a pretty good hand to do it with, or I don't know. I guess I have a lot of draws. I mean, it's pretty easy to go overboard and bet fold too much in this spot, because a lot of the hands that I'm most excited to make donk bets with are like 8-7, 5-4 offsuit. Just a lot of these like hands that have some equity but aren't really good enough to check call or check raise. And then the question is like, how do you balance that with strong hands, considering that some of your strong hands will play pretty well as checks as well. And I think if you're not vigilant about that, you end up having a bluff heavy donking range, which is why they call them donk bets in the first place.
Yeah, the thing is, one, I'm not that good, and two, I'm pretty lazy. And I really don't want a donking range and a check call range and a check raise range. So that's a whole lot of work to do all three well. So I'd rather have two, and a lot of spots I like having one, to be fair.
Yeah, I used to just pretty much never do it, and it's something I've been actively working on adding, because there are certain board textures, and it tends to be boards where the preflop raiser doesn't do a lot of c-betting, which I think this board falls in that category, where the out-of-position player does benefit an appreciable amount from developing a donking range. So I'm not going to dunk ever on like ace jack 4 offsuit, but these kind of boards that don't get c-bet real often, I've been working on trying to develop a donking range. It's not really something that I have well worked out right now. I was hoping you might be able to shed some light on things, but
three ranges I don't fuck with.
And I do think that's good advice. For me, part of the appeal of this is just kind of like enjoying the problem solving element of poker, like a little bit wanting to do that work just for the hell of it, even if like
that's where the laziness comes in.
Right. But I don't get to play that much, and so I spend like as much time thinking about stuff like this as I do actually playing.
Yeah, I mean, I love that poker has become like more of this just like strategical range thing, and kind of just like this complicated puzzle, even though it's just a lot of spots where I just don't know the right answer and it's frustrating. It's very interesting.
But yeah, bottom line here is I'm probably folding too much right now to this 9,600 raise, because I have a ton of hands like this that bet fold.
I would guess he would just destroy you on turns and rivers too.
Once I continue to the 9,600, I think I'm capable of being pretty well balanced across runouts, and like I do have a 3-betting range as well. But my biggest concern actually is just getting destroyed by the flop raise.
Okay, yeah. You'll
I think
probably play pretty well.
if he doesn't raise the flop, I feel pretty comfortable with whatever happens next. My biggest concern is just getting raised by air on the flop.
Yep. I imagine you'd have to do a lot of splitting if you want to do like incorporate a leading range there.
Yeah, you do. But the thing is, you have so you have no shortage of like weak hands. Splitting up weak hands is not a problem. The only tricky thing is like how do you divide up your sets and your 2 pairs? And the thing is on that board, I think what I'm really doing is I'm giving up check raising by donking. I think I'm not doing very much check raising on that board, and I'm like a lot of the hands that I would check raise, I'm donking instead. And I'm not too worried about not having real strong hands in my check call range because that's such a dynamic board that a lot of hands, like almost any turn card is going to generate some very strong hands for me anyway. So it's not like I have to already have strong hands in my flop check call range in order to have strong hands on the turn.
Yeah, and if it's a dry card, that helps your like parry range, and if it's not a dry card, that helps like a lot of your draws and shit.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So opened 9s here from the small blind, and with reasonably deep stacks, I tend to go pretty close to 3x on my small blind opens.
So limping's become a pretty big thing in the star scene. What do you think of limping? Do you have good ranges for this, like sub 30 bigs, or even at the stack cups? Do you do it?
I do it. I do it. The more that I respect my opponent, the more inclined I am to open limp against them. And I do think that there's potentially room to have open limping and open raising ranges. Pocket 9s is not a hand that I really like open limping with because it suffers a lot from your opponent checking behind. You know, he just has hands like Jack 4 offsuit that are never going to pay you off post flop and could easily beat you post flop and are going to fold to a raise.
Yep.
And then he also has hands like pocket 8s that might even be willing to get it in with you if you open. But are not gonna, if you like, and I don't think 9s is like good enough to limp raise, so you end up kind of limp calling them. I think I like to have a somewhat more polarized. Like I'm doing a lot of limp calling after I limp, and when I do limp raise, I want to be more polarized than this. And I don't think 9s plays real well as either a limp raise or a limp call. And there are also some weak hands like. King 7 offsuit or something that I would rather raise than limp with, even though it's sort of a value raise, but I don't think it plays that well as a limp. But this isn't something that I've like worked out mathematically. This is just kind of me eyeballing the hand that I have and trying to decide which range I think it's going to slot into. So there's a fair chance I'm inbound somewhere.
Yeah, logically, or principally. If principally is the right words. Like what hands make the most sense to limp? Because this is something I struggle with.
Like for strong hands or just in general?
Like strong hands, I know it's like 10s plus, ace queen plus, but like non-nutted hands, non-top 5% hands.
I think a lot of like bad suited hands, 10-6 suited, stuff like that is, they're hands that they're mostly going to be limp fold unless his preflop range is very, his preflop raise size is very small. I think, non-nut Broadway hands play pretty well as limp calls, like queen jack offsuit. Certainly queen jack suited plays pretty nicely as a limp call. And yeah, I think so like suited connected-y sort of stuff and like big offsuit Broadway cards and maybe like ace 9 offsuit.
Are we going for board coverage? Like how important do you think that is?
Extremely. And I think that range that I described has pretty decent
it does, yeah.
Coverage.
Looks like that.
Because there's like the 4-7 suited hands that hit certain types of boards, and queen jack offsuit hits other types of boards. And
yep, and you have like some ace highs and shit.
Yeah.
Why does board coverage matter? Even if they does board coverage matter even if they don't know your range?
I guess it depends on what you mean by know your range.
Yeah.
They can. It's not that hard to guess.
Yeah.
Like a fair number of people will guess correctly, and then sometimes people will just play in an imbalanced way that if you are imbalanced yourself, their imbalances will end up just like shaking out nicely against your imbalances, and you'll get accidentally owned.
Yeah.
Like they just,
A lot of
like you talked about people way over c betting, and so if there are certain boards that you just never have strong hands on, their over c betting becomes good instead of a mistake.
yeah, sounds good.
And it's not
Okay.
like they said, oh, that AAA guy is just going to fold way too much if I bet this flop. They're just like, derp, I raise pre-flop, I'll bet the flop. And like,
Yeah.
they're just derping their way to profit.
Yeah, there's so many like different incorrect thought processes that can lead to the right play, that can lead to exploiting you.
Yeah.
There are probably infinite different thought processes that can lead to exploiting you.
This, I think, is a spot that a lot of people. So, like, this is a very different spot, blind versus blind, than it would be if we had, opened from the cutoff and been called by the button or something. Just like here, I think Morton's range is so wide that nines is a pretty strong hand here, even though it can be in really bad shape. It's still a really strong hand.
Yeah, if you were to run your raw equity, it's pretty damn high, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
over 70 versus range, I would guess.
yeah, I'm sure of that. His range, like before he puts a penny in the pot. And then on top of that, like we have plenty of weak hands here where it's not like he can just, fold hands worse than nines when we bet the flop. Like he definitely has to continue here if he has like a pocket pair or a lot of ace high hands need to call a flop bet. So I think this is a pretty comfortable value bet. With different pre-flop ranges, I would be checking behind with nines in some spots, but I think a lot of people go too far with that, where they say, well, I know that if I had opened from under the gun and I got this flop, I would probably check nines. So, but you can't just extrapolate that to say like, well, when I'm blind versus blind, I'm going to check nines on jack 6-6. Because I do think I'm betting pretty depolarized here, I chose for small sizing. I think there are a lot of exploitive reasons why bigger sizings could be better. This again is me like problem solving versus maybe taking the arguably higher EV exploitive line.
It's interesting because I see some reasons to bet bigger too, just because he has so many chips and he just can be so likely to just peel and call.
But
And
that's
he's
what
in
I want.
position.
Like, he's never folding hands better than mine. So if I can induce him to peel with a wider range,
Well, what I'm saying is I think you can bet bigger and
it's
get
still gonna peel.
still get a lot of peels with given his stack depth and the blind levels and stage of the tourney and all that.
Yeah, I think if I were choosing a bet size for this exact hand and not thinking at all about how I'm going to play my range, I would want to use a larger size. The thing is, I kind of like just betting everything here. Like, I think this is another one of those spots where I think I have really significant range advantage. And because of that, I like similar, we talked about that 8-5-3 flop a while ago. I like being able to bet a ton of hands that I don't think you can profitably bet for large sizing.
I don't think you get many folds with like your air hands. If you have air here, I don't think he folds to 2200 that often. I think you can do some queen 10, queen 9, 10-9 type deals potentially.
Yeah, which is not the end of the world when I have ace king. I mean, when I'm talking about betting air, it's not always, it's not necessarily bad hands.
Isn't like the bottom, like, isn't a lot of your range just king high or worse when you bet here?
Yeah, but he has a lot of that stuff too. So, like, I mean, yeah, I agree that he's going to peel queen 10, but queen 5 of hearts?
No.
I
You
mean,
don't
he has,
have
he has a
to.
lot of that kind of stuff. And,
Yeah.
and the thing is, like, I don't need him to fold very much when I'm only risking this much compared to the pot. So if I'm betting here with like 10-7 of spades, yeah, I mean he'll probably peel pretty aggressively, but at the same time he doesn't need to fold very much before it becomes profitable for me.
Okay. Seems cool.
And now this I think is a pretty straightforward check call.
Yeah.
I don't think I can keep value betting, and he's going to have enough hands worse than mine that are going to want to bluff here. And then I think I can actually check fold the river and have a fair amount of like jack X. And I mean, this is not a very good bluff catcher. I could see myself having like ace king with a diamond in my range, and I would rather bluff catch with that than with pocket nines.
But do you want? I think it's interesting because, like, okay, so ace king blocks the diamond flush, but it also blocks his like ace x offsuit, ace of diamond floats that bet turn bet river too.
Do you think he's turning hands that strong into a bluff? I mean, I think there's a pretty strong case for him to just check back if he has like ace-8 on the turn. Maybe some people are just betting that, but I think that's kind of bad.
I don't know. I'm pretty indifferent towards both, but maybe you're right. But you don't block any of his floats really with the 9. Any hand that like most of the hands that float this flop, 9s don't block. That aren't a pair, 9s don't block.
Queen
Right?
9, 10 9. I
Which
guess I'm
is
also
like
blocking Jack 9, but I don't know if you value about that on the river.
those are like
You
the
probably
bottom. Like you're not blocking King Queen, you're not blocking King 10, Queen 10, uh, Ace. Well, Ace Queen probably doesn't count, but you're not blocking those.
Yeah,
Which is
the ace king, ace queen hands don't block too many of those either.
but you block because most likely floats, which are King highs and Queen highs,
Yeah,
right?
see, I kind of question whether he's going to turn king high into a bluff on the turn. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Like I don't think that's really that good of a bet. Um, but it might be one of those cases where he's doing it anyway, and I could be exploiting him by calling down.
Hmm. I
But
don't
like
know.
I don't think So what does your check call check fold range look like here? You're saying that that's what you would do with ace king?
I'm trying to think because I'm not convinced. I'm just putting up arguments
Yeah,
as
no,
to why nines is
yeah.
good.
We're debating. That's the whole point here.
Yes. Debate league. Ace, I guess blocking flushes is pretty nice. I mean, what is that? Like 10, 12 combos of flushes you're blocking when you have
Mhm.
ace of diamonds?
I mean,
But the
probably he's three betting like ace king, ace queen of diamonds pre-flop, but yeah, you're still blocking 10 or 11 anyway.
you are blocking all of his ace high floats that could bluff, but potentially he just shows those down. But maybe he doesn't. I don't know. It's a tricky spot because if he never bluffs ace high and you have ace king, then having ace king with ace diamonds is really nice. But if he likes to bluff his ace high, having ace king ace of diamonds is not very nice.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it just seems like a really wretched spot for him to bluff ace high, or if he is bluffing ace high, he's bluffing often enough that it's still profitable to call with ace king, even though you're blocking some of his bluffs. Like, because he's certainly bluffing with like 10-8 or like whatever like silliness he peeled the flop with. He's certainly bluffing if he's bluffing ace 8.
I guess that's a good point. If he's bluffing a lot of ace high when you have ace king, that's probably still a good call. It's probably a good call, anyways. Yeah. So ace king's probably like a better call than nines, I guess.
Um, that's the way I'm leaning. Certainly ace king with a diamond. I think like ace king without a diamond, I would probably fold. But I think ace king with a diamond is a pretty good call.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like I don't
Yeah.
think this is the results there too telling one way or the other. He just had it.
Yeah. Just had he bet river too?
No, he did not bet river.
Oh, okay.
Which I think is also good on his part. I think I mean, I will call with some hands worse than this, but I don't think he's overall ahead of my check call range on the river.
You check call a lot of jacks, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna play a lot of Jack X for check call on the turn. Even over pairs with a diamond, like pocket aces with a diamond, I'm gonna take this line with as well.
Cool.
Well, yeah, we're at an hour, so
How many hands we get through?
I think we cleared more than 10. Yeah, we definitely did. We start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Plus one.
plus the Jack 10 suited at the end where
12
I
hands.
busted out.
Super efficient today.
Yeah, well, no, I think it was good stuff though. I think I mean I learned something in regards to the positional 3-bet. That's definitely not something that I'm looking at often enough. So yeah, I mean, I personally, I would much rather have high quality discussions on a smaller number of hands. And I have seen some of your videos, and I know that you're perfectly capable of going 20 minutes on one hand.
Yeah, no, it was a good time, man.
Thanks so much for doing this. Yeah, I'm still up for doing something together for TP sometime, but I know that you're big into education, so I figured you'd be game for doing something like this.
Yeah, it was cool, man.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, see ya.
Take care. And there you have it. Thanks again to Daryl Jace for joining me. I hope you all found that helpful. I think we talked about some pretty high-level things, but also some material that you can probably use no matter where you are in your poker development. So if you would, just do me a favor, click here on the donate link and contribute to this great organization whatever you think the video was worth to you. I can promise you that they're going to use the money for a good cause, and it'll help me personally a little bit as well, just in terms of my clout at this particular organization. The more individual donors that I can bring in, no matter how small or large your donation, just makes me look a little better in their eyes. Makes me look a little cooler to them, and that feels nice too. So even if you just want to do it out of appreciation to me, well, I would appreciate that. You can see here, actually, this is the website through which we're taking the donations. Somehow I ended up in second place here. I had been kicking butt for a long time, had raised more than anyone else, and suddenly this Jill Fox person, who was not even in the original lineup and no profile here either, it's a bit suspicious, suddenly she shows up on the scene with $6,000 raised. So yeah, I mean, probably by the time this video goes to air, I think we'll have maybe 2 weeks or so left in the month of December, and if you all want to try to get in another $4,000 and help me beat Jill, that would be awesome. But however much you want to contribute is cool. If you contribute at least $10, this is something I should emphasize, if you contribute at least $10, you'll also be entered into a drawing to win a variety of things, including a free month's membership at Tournament Poker Edge, some gear from nickcast.com, which is where we've got premium podcasts, books written by myself and also by Thinking Poker Podcast co-host Nate Mavis, or even a free custom video that I create for you. And for every $500 that we raise, I'm going to be producing another video like this. So this is the third one that I've made. I've done one with Gareth Chandler, and I've done one with Daryl Jace. Both of those have been a lot of fun, and I think good content there as well. You've got this one. I'll be producing at least 2 more, and if you guys get us up over $3,000, I'll be producing a third free video like this one. So your contribution's not only doing good for some other folks, but doing good for yourselves as well in terms of getting some more free poker content out there. And you can do your part, make your contribution, clicking here on the donate link. Thanks, everybody.